how to create a flow to update accounts with bounced emails. So typically when you're in Salesforce and you get a bounced email, you have to manually go in and update the lead or the contact to basically be listed as not converted or unqualified or something along those lines, depending on how you have Salesforce set up. So in order to create a flow, you first have to go to your settings icon. If you'll notice denoted by that purple arrow up there in the upper right, it's the little gearbox. Once you hit that, you'll go to setup. And from there, you'll use the search bar to locate flows. If you type in flow without the S, you'll get several different options, but flows with the S, you're looking for that process automation flows designated by that purple arrow again. Once you're there, you'll see a list of flows down below, which are a little bit cut off on this screen, but you're going to go ahead and select new flow. We're going to start from scratch. There may actually be a template in there that might be of value to you, but we're going to go ahead and start from scratch. This one's not very complex. We're going to look for the record triggered flow. What this means is that something in the record or a record is going to be created that induces this to be processed. So instead of having something that's scheduled or something like that with a designated timing that's going to be run, we're going to do it based on an activity. And then once you have record triggered flow, go ahead and hit create. The very first setting that you're going to have is to select the object. It's a little bit not necessarily intuitive because you can do this on a lead or a contact, etc. But we're going to do this based on the email message. And the reason for this is if you do it on the lead or the contact directly, it seems like you're going to have to actually edit the contact in order for this flow to take place. Whereas with the email message, once the email is sent, it will actually trigger that this flow. So once we have that, we're going to go ahead and select a record is created or updated, meaning an email is going to come in or an email gets updated. This just makes it a little bit more inclusive as to when it's going to run. And then for the condition requirements, we're going to do all conditions. Really, there's just one condition that we're going to have, but we're going to go ahead and select all conditions. And for these conditions, when we set them, we're going to set the field of is bounced, which basically means that the email is bounced. It's going to be equal to true, and that means that that email bounced. Then down at the bottom, we're going to leave that every time a record is updated and meets the condition requirements, we're going to leave that as is, but you're going to go ahead and leave the actions and related records as well as our primary flow optimization, if you will. And you're going to go ahead and hit save up there at the top. You can name this however you want to name it. I named mine bounced emails, and in fact I have a couple different versions of these as I was testing the waters, but bounced emails will suffice as a fairly intuitive name for this. And you'll go ahead and hit save. And then what you're going to do is over there on the left you have your kind of diagram, and you have your record triggered flow starting point. It's going to run immediately once the record is triggered, and then it's going to end. But in between these, nothing is actually happening. So what we need to actually hit that plus icon designated by the arrow to designate what's actually going to happen in this flow. So the very first thing, once you hit that plus symbol, you have a search to add the element, and actually that update triggering flow is what we want. So that's usually right at the top. So you go ahead and select that, and then you're going to edit that element. Again, you have to give it a label. The label that I chose was bounced email update, which again I think is pretty intuitive. And then from there, you're going to change it from originally the default is use the email message record that triggered the flow. We're actually not going to do that. We're going to specify conditions to identify the records and set fields individually. What that allows you to do is instead of updating the email directly, we're going to use the email to and several conditions to then loop in a different object and then set those fields. So we're going to go ahead and select that bottom radio icon there to specify conditions, to identify records, and set fields individually. And then from there, you're going to go ahead and select lead. So this is specifically this. We're going to do this for leads only. I'll do another video for contacts, etc. But we're going to start with leads. So we're going to go ahead and select the lead object. And then from there, we're going to use that all conditions are met again, which is the and symbol. And then for field, we're going to have email bounce date. What this means is email bounce dates are inherently empty. So if no emails have bounced, it's just left empty. But we need to basically say if this field is populated. So if there's any value in here, it means that an email did bounce. I did a little bit of a let's say we'll call it a bootstrap. Why not? But we just kind of hard coded it very simply here, which basically we said if the email bounce date is greater than January 1st of 1900, which I would assume you wouldn't have any dates prior to 1900 in here. Then we're gonna utilize it. So there may be a better way to do that, but this should suffice just fine. So we're gonna basically say if the email bounce date is any date above the year 1900, then we're gonna go ahead and do something. And at the bottom is what we're gonna do. We're gonna mark the status field as closed, not converted. This is kind of a default value. The status field is a default field for lead objects in the Salesforce playground. For your company, you might have different designations. So you might have like qualified or unqualified or things like that. But it's going to basically be the same routine. You just might alter the field accordingly. So we're going to go ahead and make that status closed, not converted, which basically means we're no longer interested in this. Go ahead and hit save and activate. If you haven't activated it, nothing's going to happen. So even though you save this, if it's not an active flow, it's not going to engage with any of your objects. So we're going to activate it. Go ahead and find a lead. So go back to your sales platform. Find any lead that you will need to know that their email is not valid. So you could do like 1234 at 1234.com as a tester or something. I happen to know that this email is not a valid email. This is a fake person. So I'm going to go ahead and send her an email. I do like to give it a title. So you'll notice that I call this one Did It Bounce? Mostly I like to give it a title because it gives me some indication when I look through an email chain. I can see different titles and different subjects. And Did It Bounce is a nice tester. You could call it, bounce test or something like that. And then we're going to go ahead and hit send. I didn't bother putting any sort of body in the paragraph or anything, or paragraph in the body. So we'll go ahead and hit send. And then finally, you may have to give it a moment. It's not necessarily going to run right away. So you may have to give it maybe a couple minutes and revisit it. But what you're looking for is on that account, there'll be a little kind of triangle explanation point here indicating that that email account was bounced. We weren't able to email that account. And then once that shows that, again, you may have to give it a little bit. We're hoping that this status bar here went from this far left section over to closed, not converted automatically, that I didn't have to manipulate it. So if all that passes, you've done it successfully. And now you don't have to worry once you have, if you're sending out list emails or anything like that, if you get any bounced emails, you will not have to manually go in and convert these to closed, not converted. They'll automatically do that for you, and it can be removed for your list as long as you're filtering for that. So we'll do a video on that in the future. Anyway, hope this was helpful, and I'll be putting out more videos soon.